Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and today we're looking at Californium. This is a 2016 game, according to Steam, that I recall as I was in the middle of being led around by the nose, frankly, by Giant Bomb's podcast. This was a game that was recommended, and then I pretty much 100% avoided any spoilers for it, and have managed to do that much all the way to now. The weird part about this, though, is I was looking at games to potentially play next. This is one of these games that, as it gets older, seems to get on Steam a lower review rating. It just doesn't really stand up to the turns of time, I guess. A 7 given by, say, a reviewer on Giant Bomb is just not the equivalent of a 7 today compared to a 7 last year, compared to a 7 10 years ago, with large exceptions. I imagine a lot of games from even 5 years ago, given a 7 out of 10, probably are closer to a 3 or a 4, and that doesn't even go into the larger problem, certainly, of the 7 out of 10 really being 5 out of 10 if you were to actually weight the scale to an appropriate level, in that you would take all the people who've ever reviewed any game as a 1 and give that a percentage and weigh it so it averaged out a little bit more. I'm not explaining the math there quite right. My point being there that reviewers love to give 7s out of 10s when they really mean the game is exactly average, in the middle there. And you could justify a scale like that, certainly, if you reviewed a lot of terrible games intentionally, but if you don't, which most reviewers don't, you end up with the IGN 7 out of 10 issue that people often meme and joke about, where there's almost nothing that ever gets below a 7. Anyways, talking about this game. So, this game, as far as it seems to say, doesn't have controller support. I've turned up the anti-aliasing from 2x to 8x by default, and everything else I left the same, except for the audio, which I've cranked up really high. Now, I mentioned it says no controller support because, weirdly, I'm going up and down on my Xbox controller, and it's working. So, I have no idea what the deal with that is. Like, when I hit A, it doesn't do anything. When I hit B, it doesn't do anything. When I hit X, it doesn't do anything. When I hit Y, it doesn't do anything. So, while the up and down seems to have been programmed in some kind of experiment, the actual other buttons are not programmed. Yeah, I've just gone through every trigger, every analog click, left click, right click, up on the D-pad, start, back. Yeah. None of those other things work. Which, that's about the weirdest way possible to have a game to have the up and down. And that was me dropping my controller. Yeah. That's a weird way to have things set up. So, yeah. Let's start the game. Start over again. I started the game once just to make sure the audio was playing. Now, I probably should know a little bit more about this. I know this is kind of a weird sci-fi game where we go, I think, through different dimensions. But that's about it. I know that there's kind of a weird color palette to it, and there is a weird polygonal aspect to it. So, even if we did have controller support, you can see on this first screen what they want you to do is type in 5, 6, and at some point that's going to move the story forward. Let's read. 1, 2, 3, your loss crushes me. 4, 5, 6, where are you, Alice? Rhyming Alice. And 6, 1, 2, 3, scared of what will be. 4, 5, 6, we'll meet by the Styx. The river Styx is the Greek place where the dead pay the ferryman and cross over into the underworld. 1, 2, 3, your loss crushes me. 4, 5, 6. And so we just keep typing this. So this is very much just a reference to, like, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy in the movie what is it? The Shining. Yeah. Now this is weird because it's not having me type any of the punctuation, and even if I still was at the heyday there of my touch typing skill, that would almost certainly throw me for a loop. And yeah, of course it's pretty impossible for me to type since I don't have an actual desk, and proper positioning in my keyboard is arguably one that I have not stayed up with the home row keys on. Okay, we have a knock at the door here. Good, because it was getting rather ridiculous to just keep on typing there. Well, it's going to still make me type. This is an interesting way to interactively tell you that the person you're playing as is probably crazy. But it's also a very boring way to start a game. Let's just leave it at that. Martian Minds. Alright. So now we're resolving to a WASD and a mouse left click. Let's see what mouse left click does. I guess it interacts. What does the shift button do? I don't know. So let's just look around here. Doesn't seem like we can. Thea, winter clothes. It doesn't seem like we can interact with too much. Freak Out the Magazine of the Unexpected, July 1965, number 24. So, yeah, you have a low polygon style here of kind of a smoothed off low polygon style, though not as bad as some of the sharp edges you see in like Roblox type games. So there's several different posters here, all for this Freak Out magazine, which I kind of feel like it's a magician's magazine, if I was to guess. But it could just be more of a crazy tinfoil hat conspiracy type magazine. Now what's interesting is I think it said you could do something with F, whereas WASD obviously is forward, back, left, right, but I don't know what F would do. We've got a record player here. So it looks like we're set up for our character to be an alcoholic, or just a really untidy person who's not cleaned up after a party, and probably crazy. Interesting to have handles both parallel and vertical on a refrigerator. If anything, the multiple cups and the amount of alcohol here and the pots and pans to me implies that it was closer to a party than just a lack of cleaning, but it could be either, certainly. You would think that maybe you could interact with something like this and pick it up and look at it. Something has been slipped under the door. We can see it's bright white to tell us that's something to look for in the future. So I guess our character's name is Elvin. For years now, ever since we lost our little Alice, I've shared my life with a stranger consumed by grief. Where did your dreams go? What happened to the Elvin Green who wanted to offer his wonderful stories to the world? I'm leaving to escape the madness that is slowly killing you before it destroys me too. I'm leaving so I can fight my own battles. I would have loved to have you by my side. Good luck, Elvin T. So, I assume that's Elvin's wife leaving and Alice was the daughter. So, tragedy seemed to befall him. And now we're getting a weird buzzing sound. Looking out the window to the rest of the world. Now we're getting a ringing sound. Cigarettes, bathtub, weird water heater.
Hello, you've reached 415-612-1928.
Hope I don't have to remember that.
Hey buddy, it's Don. I've been trying to reach you for 2 weeks now. I'm still waiting on your copy for the radio ads. The campaign launches at the end of the month, and the clients want me to fire you to get your ass over to Weird Worlds on the double.
We have a past due bill. And the visuals are just changing. Or I expect to see something change here visually pretty quickly. Otherwise I'm just passing out or having a seizure or something. TV turns on by itself. Thea kitchen. Thea, I assume, is the wife. And then we have that. Was that there before? So you can't actually interact with the door. So this kind of has like a Silent Hill the Room vibe to it. Almost. As far as I understand Silent Hill the Room. And that you're in part of the story trapped in this room and then you end up in Silent Hill anyways. Now we've got a...
It looks like it's the end of the line for you, Mr. Green. Incurable writer's block. Her brain corroded by mind-bending drugs and dime store alcohol. The woman of your dreams and your little girl, no more than distant memories. Who'd want to live such a nightmare?
Now, it says 6, where it said 0 before. I don't know if I really love having a central dot reticle in the middle. I just don't know if it really is that necessary to help prevent the percentage, whatever percentage of players that might get motion sick, particularly in a game like this, when you're just not going to have a high amount of performance and movement anyways. This is glitching over here. So, this is a narrative story, maybe a little bit like Stanley Parable, in that something is going to talk to us. There's another thing. So are we supposed to click on those? Did seem like it interacted when I clicked on it. Yes. Interesting. And it still says 6. So a bit of a puzzle. This opens up seemingly to just another wall that feels like they'd walled over Alice's room. Now it says 5. Although if this was just a room there, the crown molding and everything and the colors are all different. It seems like you have to potentially walk certain distances. So it seems like we're straight up switching the world to a different alternate reality, which that's an interesting trick, certainly. And now down to 4. But having multiple realities, I think particularly in more modern times, when I try to think about how this game might be somewhat comparable to the different ages in Myst, probably requires a lot more a lot better writing. Like, maybe this game can do a good job trying to pull that off, but yeah, if it was just a general you're gonna find things and then you're gonna see a different version of reality concept, that wouldn't be enough. You need to see how our character, who has been characterized, which is a good first step for sure. And see, this is California Republic flags here, so the state flags of California. Which I'm not 100% sure we were in California to start with. There's 3 more, and you just gotta find them. And I guess glitches alone aren't going to be the only thing. You're gonna have to get close to things glitching. All of a sudden it does certainly make sense why you would have a very specific orange color palette of shades of orange for the original version of the reality, and then shades of blue for the secondary version of reality, which I almost wonder if this is a version of reality where California became its own nation and is perhaps run by a different form of governance, maybe some horrible dictatorship, or maybe not. The low polygon aspects of these models has allowed them to pull off a trick that would be, I guess, a little bit more difficult to animate, or at least programmatically animate, which is how this cup is getting clipped as the area of influence, the sphere of influence, is swelling in and out. Okay. 2 more. It would feel like there would be one over here. It would almost make sense for there to be an audio feedback element to this also. We can see how this is going to get fancy with its tricks too, because the sphere of influence from the other side of the bathroom is bleeding in on this side. And bleeding in over here. But it doesn't seem like we're going to find those symbols inside of any of the blue areas. And I still somewhat question, maybe it's up higher. Let's look high and low. If this is the way the game is going to be played the whole time, or if this is a one-time gimmick. And then we'll be asked to do something different. Which maybe it's fine to be asked something different. Because if the entire game really was just a hidden object game with interesting visuals and interesting story wrapped around it, I could see why it might not be that well received. This is a game that definitely doesn't feel like it is selling itself through its thumbnails and through the visuals and the screenshots as a hidden object game. And in all fairness, the tags aren't hidden object either, so I do suspect that that's not the entirety of what we're doing here. Yeah, I could definitely imagine I'm taking too long here. We'll have to look out the windows, I guess, and maybe see if there's something out there. This is taking too long to find the remaining 2. If it is out a window, there's a lot of room for different angles to look out a window. Could be very small, could be on some surface. Just look downward and sweep the ground as much as possible. Generally, I would like to see a game like this, if it's going to propose one puzzle to be solved, give me something else I can potentially make some progress on during the process too. Don't make me 100% reliant on solving that one and only puzzle. So I had to stand by this light to hit that. And then the area of influence kind of appeared in a slightly different place from where I thought it would. So it's where you stand potentially makes an area light up. And the layout of this room seems weirdly different. Like, I could see a lot of things being in different places, but when you start to get to a level of moving where the plumbing and the kitchen would be, that seems a little extreme. Right. So, I guess the trick here is to try and stay against the walls. I wouldn't be surprised if this last one, or maybe second to last one, is always going to be the last one you unlock. And then it's kind of linear. But yeah, just stand by every surface and try and walk against the walls and look around. Of course, the problem with this idea immediately, and controller support would be very helpful here, is that you're not separately controlling the camera as easily as you're controlling the movement of the player and the character, because, well, I'm not doing it, I will say that much, because I am not used to having to swing a mouse around. I'd like to think I could just intuit where the last one would be, but I'm not really having any luck there. It's very possible it's not standing against a wall, and it's instead standing against something else. I would expect it to be standing against something, because it would be very hard to describe. I think I may have seen something there. It'd be very hard to describe what to do in like a walkthrough or a suggestion or a hint if it was stand in this exact spot in the middle of the wall. Alright, let's think this through. We were in here, we found this one standing from a distance there. That one gave us a mirror. There's kind of a sight theme here. We were standing here, and that gave us this one over there. We were kind of standing, I think, over here, and that. So it does seem like it's more likely to be, I think, some distance away. It doesn't feel like they would really want to crowd this too much, but the last one could easily be right next to another. This would be my best guess, so I was supposed to stand here. You've really dried up a lot of opportunity for character development and story, though, by throwing a difficulty spike right at the beginning here. Shift button still not really doing anything. Let's take another thought and say maybe it is standing in the bubbles of influence. Shows the next thing that needs to be clicked on. That could be it. If that was the case, then it would have to be this bubble. Would point to something else. And it isn't. We do have this blinking light, but I can't really do anything with it. Standing here. How would I have triggered the first one if you had to stand in a bubble of influence, though? That wouldn't have made sense. So that's probably not the case. I would also say I suspect that this game is not written by a native English speaker. The fact that it was, the answering machine was labeled as an announcer on the subtitles does scream not a native English speaker, because yeah, announcer is not something anybody who has ever heard of an answering machine, which in modern days maybe not that many people have even heard of answering machines. Man, this is crazy. Alright, so this is a blinking light. Let's just zoom back here and pan and keep an eye on the blinking light. Nothing. This looks like in this grate there could be something there. It looks like it might be blinking, but that might just be anti-aliasing or texture pop-in. Yeah, you have a lady on the street and some signs. Maybe it is out the window. I feel like at some point we will go outside. Just like slowly inch your way in a direction. This totally shouldn't be this hard. And that does create a weird situation, certainly as a YouTube content creator, is that there's always this chance that you'll... Okay, there it is. Finally. There's always a chance that the game... You'll play a game and it will just be incredibly difficult, or you'll get stuck and just look like an idiot. For what could be a long time. There's always the possibility of just pausing the recording and or looking up a solution on a walkthrough, and that's usually what I do, is just look up walkthroughs. But yeah, certainly can be embarrassing. But in general, if I'm struggling with it, it means that some percentage of other players also would have struggled with it. This is a poster of a rocket landing into the eye on a face on the moon. It's been artistically recreated, but this is a reference to a very early cinematic film short. I don't know what the exact name of it is, but it's one of the earliest ones, but not the earliest one. The earliest one is like a train, a video of just a train coming towards the camera. Or at least that's what's believed to be the earliest commercial film. Okay.
Oh, congratulations, Mr. Green. It looks like you can achieve something after all. How touching. But this is just the first step. Writing is a solitary vice. Are you ready to face the outside world?
So, obviously this narrator doesn't really have a lot of compassion for you. If anything, he has disdain. We can see electric cars being shown in a black and white poster. So, might be something here. There's also this that's red. So the screen is off, the door is open, and at a certain level, because that took so long, I potentially have a justification to just end the episode here, but I have no idea how long this game is, and frankly, solving one puzzle is not really enough for an episode. I would have bet 50-50 odds that once we got that final transformation, the entirety of the room would be transformed. But oddly, no. And the rest of the world is mostly in these orange tone palette colors, although noticeably that is blue. Maybe we'll have to transform the whole world. And so here's this flat 2D lady.
There you are, Green. Not only do you owe me 5 months' rent, you don't even bother to answer my letters anymore. I can barely get by on my small pension. I have no choice but to evict you. Oh, you look like a bum. Get off the drugs and find a real job, Green.
Okay. So that wasn't a pleasant interaction. Rolling Dice Diner. Brain Food. Reality Checks. Oaks. So maybe you are high and this is a trippier experience. She'll just rotate. So blue, maybe positive things. Red, maybe. No, this says peace and love. This says love. This might be closer to a hippie era time. Although, it'd be kind of hard to tell based on the way the drugs are designed. This is interesting. When I start to move forward with it, with the W button, it zooms out further and further back. That makes no sense. My only guess is that maybe that is as far as we're allowed to go and there's just an invisible wall there, but that's a weird way to depict it. It's like different audio playing different ways.
Right and center. I think I'm down since Monterey. Fucking LSD! Okay, so now I'm half blind and I feel like I'm speaking in 3 different voices and having 8 or 9 conversations at one time. Actually, I don't even know if I'm on the air right now. So cool, man. Okay, so there's this new dope in town, straight from Mexico.
So
bring us a sample of crystal A.
there's a guy in here talking, and we can hear
I
him.
gotta tell you about my trip to the red planet. It was nighttime in the celestial dome, my friends. Fuck! We are really nothing, and we're totally alone. Totally alone.
Can I open this car? So maybe this guy is tripping and is from the blue world, and that's why his van is blue and everything else here is red. Here we have another TV, and I guess that's how we're going to do this. 5 new things to find, and okay. Music just kind of abruptly ends there. No narrator talking to us this time. Suppose there's a thought certainly to be had around how much drugs should a creative person do. It is usually the case that creatives tend to experiment with drugs. Stephen King's kind of a great example of that, doing cocaine for a lot of his time writing books, but inherently the creatives always feel like they can't be creative after a while, unless they're doing drugs, and then they eventually have to, for the sake of their own health, stop doing drugs, and then for the most part they seem like they still can be creative without the drugs, maybe in different ways, maybe in more coherent ways. And I would say there's probably a lot more research that would have to be done as far as what drugs and how much, because I would argue maybe a little bit of magic mushrooms once or twice in your life might be the maximum amount you really need to do if you are going to experiment with drugs. I guess I can't inherently recommend the experience, but the massive amount of just cocaine to keep you going, keep you awake, keep you working and over energized that Stephen King and most people who do cocaine is probably not actually contributing much to the creative process other than keeping people awake and energized. Weirdly, I don't think you get a choice here as far as whether you like the red world or you like the new things being put in here. It opens up a very high realm of possibility when you're in such an open world area looking for glitches. Like, things could be very far away. We can walk across the street and you might have assumed that you couldn't have done that. Postmodern times. Okay. I do know that there's a limitation of how far you can go. Of course, the problem with a story like this where it's basically just a drug trip story. Definitely saw something over there, but I don't know if maybe there's a timing element to this versus just where you're standing as an element. I think I am not supposed to actually be seeing through that. I think that might be a glitch. A video game glitch, not a visual glitch. Okay. I was standing here and it disappeared like when the car drove by or when I looked at it too much. Is it the case that you can't stare at it too much? That might be it. That might very well be the case, is that there's a new property to these. And so we'll have to potentially look for things that are just in the corner of our eye and click on them. So at a certain level, I guess this is almost emulating the experience of being hallucinating, and that you're having to look through the corner of your eye and think of Right, we can't get to that yet. I don't think. You get this white cloud around you as you get in that direction. Let's see what this guy has to say.
Hey man, you going to weird worlds? You write sci-fi? Sure takes imagination. I'll get you to read a short story of mine. It's about this dog and he thinks garbage men are aliens. Maybe you could talk to Don about it? I heard him yelling earlier. He was going berserk, baby. The guy seems like a real hot ass.
So yeah, like the ideas of radio static potentially being something. Yeah, the ideas of things in your front, in the side of your vision, just appearing and disappearing, all hallucinogenic.
Hey, Elvin. Man, you are a
elements.
sorry sight. I'm still waiting on your first novel. You know, I've always been there for you, but we can't go on like this. I'm through with giving you advances to sit around all day sinking deeper into depression. I'd rather remain good friends and let you find another publisher. Look at me, Mr. Nice Guy, hooking you up with advertising gigs, but you can't even write those. The radio ads for the astronaut patty dolls? Nothing. The ones for Love Lax laxatives? Nada. And me? I have to refund the clients. Sorry, pal. But you're a writer who doesn't write. Too bad. Sci-fi is cool. Like that guy from San Rafael who wrote that novel about the freaks who live on Mars. I didn't get all of it, but the guy tripped me out. That's the kind of stuff I'd like to publish and freak out.
So maybe he publishes Freak Out, which I guess is a sci-fi magazine, and this is a certain era of like that first generation of Star Trek, basically the original series time, where sci-fi in novel form is the form that people were looking for. Let's see. Jivin' and Bebop. So this guy's all about sci-fi, and this office is seemingly going to be transformed. You have to move and click on it on that one. Ooh, that certainly opens things. And it looks like we're just gonna swap reality here, and then this is going to be the guy on the street's house. more about music, less about sci-fi. Wish there was a way to zoom in and look at some of this stuff. Interestingly, this has opened a door. There's a person in there, and I don't feel like there was a person there before. So how many? One more in this area? But that is an interesting question, certainly, is just what is the area of influence of each of these TVs? The blinking there.
Well, our illustrious writer has discovered a taste for multiple realities.
The Great Abe by Elvin Green. So, in the blue reality, instead of writing sci-fi, you're writing about Abraham Lincoln, I assume, who would have been a United States president still. Looks like there's a new person over there, so it seems like as we make progress, we also are unlocking the... Yeah, that door is open now. So we're just unlocking new areas, and we're unlocking new people to talk to. Let's see. Interesting.
Namaste, Elvin. Some guy from Narc Squad was grilling me all morning. He wanted to know who was dealing crystal 8 in the neighborhood. So I said, why, you want some? No, but that racist asshole smacked me in the face. How's Thea doing? She never come by for the albums she ordered. I got a ton of new stuff in. Hendrix, The Who. Let's hope they release a recording from the Monterey Festival. Ravi Shankar blew everyone away. You need to hear that. It's a perfect, exotic, psychedelic music. It opens up your chakras.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I really believe that this orange world is supposed to be anywhere close to a reality world. There's a little too much diversity for, I think, the time frame it would be in, and these posters seem a little crazy. There's perhaps some references here to musicians and songs, but if anything, this feels like a world made up in the mind of somebody who has been doing too much LSD, or did too much LSD when they were in the 60s or 70s or 80s, whenever. See, this looks like a police vehicle. So it kind of feels like it might very well be a case that the orange world is more of a... I saw one here. Orange world may be more of a peace-loving hippie world that seemingly still has a police officer, but in a police force. But the blue world may be a world without fiction in it at all. It may be this very stringent, strict world that has no creativity in it. And even at that, it's important to point out that This police officer is in the light blue outfit that, for the most part, police in modern time have increasingly gone for dark black outfits with only perhaps a shade of blue, as they've been increasingly militarized, and that's not exclusively to the United States, but it is very common in the United States too. It's kind of ridiculous the police in the United States refer to themselves as the boys in blues because they A are not boys, and B, they aren't often in blue. Whereas the more vulnerable,
I heard sweet old Mrs. Reagan is real mad at you.
Now, notice his name was labeled Policer there. He doesn't have anything more to say.
You need to take a shower, son. You look like shit. Even the army wouldn't take you.
So there's 2 more in this area. We know that there are pretty much just unique tricks of movement around finding these things. Tesla Co. Entire building fairly significantly changed there. And I guess we aren't in any real risk of getting hit. This crossing part is obviously a line. Can't go any further. See, it's just a gas station now. Let's see what this lady has to say.
Well, hello
This
there, young
guy
man.
has to say.
A novelist friend of mine told me a good story. Friends gather for a dinner party. They start by having drinks. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the host has left out a beautiful 7-pound fish ready to bake. Everyone gets a little tipsy, and when the woman goes back to the kitchen to put the fish in the oven, it's gone! Nothing but the family cat licking his chops. Where did the fish go, the guests wonder. Then they have a great idea. Why don't we weigh the cat? They all go to the bathroom and put the cat on the scales. The arrow moves 7 pounds exactly. There. Now we know where the fish went, they say. Everyone's relieved to find this rational explanation for the missing fish, until one of the guests exclaims, "But where did the cat go?" You could call it Schrodinger's fish, don't you think? Have a good day.
That's some nonsense there, certainly, as a story, and maybe the reason we're getting nonsense stories here is to just add to the unreality of the situation. The problem with that is if it's a 7-pound fish and the cat eats it, 7 pounds worth of food, including all the scales and bones and everything like that, the cat would have to have started at 0 pounds to weigh 7 pounds after the fact. And that's really assuming that in the process of eating things, you actually gain 7 pounds of weight when eating a 7-pound fish, which you probably would lose a few ounces at least. But maybe it wouldn't exactly be 7 pounds. Regardless, the math doesn't work out there. It almost feels like that story is trying to be an awkward backwards way of explaining Schrodinger's cat. But even at that, my understanding of Schrodinger's cat doesn't really make sense around that story. Alright, well, there is certainly a question here as far as how long this game is. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe this was a German game originally or a French game. I wouldn't assume any other languages in yeah. Supporting English and French lets you sell your game in Canada. Supporting English lets you sell the game in lots of places. Supporting German lets you sell the game in Germany, which for the most part French and German would also make most countries happy enough to sell it throughout all of the European Union. So yeah, I would have to assume the main target audience here would be European Union, Europe, not United States and Canada. If it was a main target of the United States, then you might add Spanish to include Mexico in the mix. So yeah. Well, unfortunately, I guess I have to kind of apologize here in that it took me so long to figure out how to solve the first few puzzles, the first puzzle, that this is turned into an hour episode in a game that may very well only be 2 or 3 hours long in total. Now that we are in a more open world, we are potentially capable of making progress towards three puzzles at the same time. But yeah, as we shift here, I wouldn't be 100% surprised if the entirety of the story is that you solve all these puzzles and you go to a different reality, and that reality is just better and you just live there forever. You would then potentially, if that's not the case, assume that you go to a different reality and realize that reality is not any better, and then you do the Alice in Wonderland thing and return back to your original reality with a new perspective, or a Wizard of Oz thing, which I guess it is pretty much the exact same theme for Alice in Wonderland and Wizard of Oz. You go to a new place, gain perspective, return to your original starting point. That probably happens in a lot of stories. Anyways, that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's a link down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.